Serious, has anybody had any paranormal experiences specifically with demons entities? My mom currently is sort of possessed. Since last year, she was sick and throwing up a lot and was rushed to the hospital. After a few days, she was fine, but as soon as she reached home, her sickness started again. She had to quit her job. We suspect it's sort of paranormal because she always get headaches around 7 p.m. She asked for help from my uncle who can see and communicate with things like this, and I see with my own eyes when my mom's eyes turn full black. She was also laughing and screaming in a really high-pitched voice. It's not her voice, but the thing that is inside her was screaming because it's burning from the Quran verse my uncle was reading. It impacted us a lot financially and emotionally. My mom hasn't fully recovered yet because COVID is fleabing up everything. I don't think it's a demon, but my parents' house is haunted. It was built on top of an old farm road. My friends, family, and I have all experienced weird incidents. People going down the stairs, someone walking around upstairs in my brother's room. My closet door opening by itself. I would close it and then come back to find it open. Someone whistling in our backyard. Then last of all, my niece saw a man staring at her through the second-floor window. It should be noted that the window had no area underneath it, that someone could look through the window unless they put a ladder up against the house. I fell asleep on my back. When I woke, I couldn't move anything, just my eyes. This black figure started taking over my peripheral vision, and it seemed to be right next to me. In bed, I tried calling out, but nothing was coming out, like it took my voice from me. I could feel myself mouthing the words, but nothing came out. My lips went numb and it felt like needles all over my lips. I then heard my door start to creak open and could see it open by itself. Then I heard a ton-load of voices talking all at once, sounding like 1,000 people talking at once. I couldn't make out one word while my ears started ringing real bad when suddenly, everything stopped. I could move again, but my door was still opening by itself. I got up, went to the living room, said Flurbo that, as I felt a presence there. Suddenly my phone's alarm starts going off. Mind you, I never set an alarm, and my phone was dead. It was like something was trying to get me back to my room. I've had a lot of experiences in that room though. Waking up with handprints on my body, getting dragged out my bed to see no one is there. I felt someone lay down with me and was cuddling me, and I assumed it was my wife at the time, but when I turned, no one was in the bed with me. When I woke up in the morning, I had the whole imprint of an arm and hand on my stomach like someone was cuddling me in my sleep. Also in that room when my daughter was 3, she was looking around pointing. I asked her what is she doing, she said, "Do you see them, Daddy?" I said, "See what?" She replies with, "The black shadows crawling on the walls." Now, I was living in one of them real nice mobile homes, so I doubt it was really old. But I'm not that religious and I'm kind of on the darker side of things. When I was a teenager, I wrote up a contract to sell my soul. I also grew up in an old haunted 3-story house. Ever since then, every place I have lived at, I've had a lot of paranormal things happen to me physically, mentally, and emotionally. I was always really angry, breaking things in my home. I think I just attracted bad energy, and it was feeding off my anger that it even made the lights flicker to footsteps being heard running through my halls. Things were showing up in completely different rooms they were originally in, knocking at my front door, doorknobs jiggling, etc. I started hearing my name being called all the time when no one was calling me. I believe I had done adult things with a succubus as well in that room. My ex was on top, and suddenly the room got real pitch black, darker than it should have been, and I just got this weird feeling. I kept telling her to get off me, that I didn't feel like she was her, and she just kept saying, "Stop, it's me babe," in this real light sweet sounding voice that was not her voice at all. Then I felt like I could see these things coming out her back. The outline looked like some form of wings, but it was too dark to see what it was. I started to panic and pushed her off me, then went to sleep. The next day, I talked to my ex about it, and she swears she don't recall having done adult things that night and that she fell asleep in the living room. She didn't even sleep in the room with me. This is just more stuff that was happening to me. My mom always blamed it on me though. She said I invited these evil things into my life and my house. When my mom and ex-wife would be at my house, they would always say they feel like someone is down the hall and would hear noises coming from my room and hear my voice calling them to the room when I wasn't even home. I have two. The first one. It was actually really close to Halloween, which made this more ironic, but anyways, I was trying to sleep, and when I sleep, I usually always sleep with the covers on my face. I was facing up and just chilling, but then I felt something picking up the blanket right where my face was. As if someone was using just 2 fingers to pull up the blanket very slowly just above my face and then slowly place it back down. Then it happened again, 2 inches away from the first place where they did it. I very much doubt it could have been wind or my blanket falling off because the movement of the blanket seemed so precise and smooth. I think I cried after. The second time actually happened a few days ago. I was on my side in bed again, and I decided it was time to sleep, so I turned my phone off and turned to my other side. Except when I did, I saw a head-shaped shadow that was peeking out of the bottom of my curtain, almost as if it had been observing me, and when I saw it, it quickly went back in the curtain and seemed to move the curtain to cover itself. I DK what it was, but I also cried after that happened. I have several. These all happened at the same house, which was a 100-year-old farmhouse that was also a part of the Underground Railroad. We no longer live there. The house isn't there anymore. It's a very expensive neighborhood. My parents said that they were sitting on our couch and watching TV. The fireplace shutter opened and closed several times on their own. My mom was sitting in the same living room. Towards her front was a large wooden deck that had a fireplace in the center and 2 large windows on either side. To the right was a concrete porch that ran the length of that side of the house. It had a door off to the side and had several large windows on it as well. To her back was a bedroom that us kids shared in the winter because it was easier to heat half the house. To her left was the blue room. The whole thing was blue, but it was just a central room where our computer happened to be and had access to the basement. Anyways, on the wooden deck, my mom saw a black figure that was as tall as a bear but too thin to be human. She said that she looked at it and had a feeling that it was watching her. It wasn't completely dark outside, but it was on its own way. The figure then started doing laps around the house. It would pass the windows in front of her every few seconds. This was a 2,500-ish square foot farmhouse. It was incredibly fast. We had a small family farm. Chickens, goats, pigs, quail, turkey, ducks, etc. Nothing big. We had about 30 chickens at the time. Living that far out in the country, we always set up traps by the coop to catch opossums and raccoons. Anything that ate chickens. Well, we go outside one day to see piles of feathers throughout the yard around the coop. Every single pile had a head on top of it. 30-ish piles. And that many heads. No puddles of red vital fluids. No insides anywhere. Just piles of feathers and heads. Shortly after this, my dad, sometimes myself as well, would go out at night with a shotgun to see if we could find anything. We had gotten more chickens and had nothing unusual in the traps. Just cages. My dad was a manly man. Wasn't scared of anything. I've seen him move a tree by himself out of the road that 4 grown men weren't able to get together. He's tough, to say the least. So, he goes out like he usually does. Our chicken coop sits about 50-ish feet in front of our garage. It was really just a 1,000 square foot ranch outbuilding. We just called it the garage. So, we hear 5 blasts or so from the shotgun, and very shortly after, my dad comes through the front door with tears pooping down his face. He is visibly shaking. After he calms down a bit, he explains that while in front of the garage, he heard a real guttural growl coming from the tree line right behind and above the garage. He said it wasn't like anything he had ever heard in his life. He was an avid hunter growing up. He's heard and probably eaten just about any animal that Indiana has to offer. He said it was low and demonic. He said he could just feel that it was evil. He immediately unloaded the shotgun and ran to the house. I don't like to talk about this one much, but it's relevant. I would hear voices in that house. One night, I woke up my parents crying to let them know that the devil wanted my soul and wouldn't stop trying to get me to give it to him. I don't remember much about it because this was about 5th grade. I'm 31 now. I've since been diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. I could see where it might have just been my anxiety, but I definitely remember sitting on the living room floor, sobbing at like 3 a.m., just begging for the voices to stop. I haven't had anything else at all similar to this ever happen. My parents found a tunnel in our basement that we assumed was a part of the Underground Railroad. My cousin was over at the time and asked if he could explore it. It was covered up, about shoulder height to an adult, and an adult could crawl through with not a whole lot of extra room. He had a flashlight and was gone for about a half hour. We were starting to get very worried when we could see the light again. He came back and said that there had not been an end in sight, but he was getting nervous having crawled so far. He was probably 16-ish. We always had dogs and we would find our dogs in front of our house just dead. No wounds, prior symptoms. Just dead. Sometimes 3 at a time. My dad, on the way home from work, saw a pile of dead dogs in a field by our house. Probably about 5 feet tall. A ton of freaking dogs. My 2 brothers and I were in the house and things started to fall off the walls. We ran outside into the field in front of our house and looked across the street to the other cornfield. There were hundreds of deer just running. It filled the field for several minutes. Enough disruption caused by them running to make it look like a small earthquake. We found out, after we moved, that there was a practicing coven that met not far from our house. We heard that a lot of dead animal remains had been found. A decent amount of years later, I went with my sister to Chicago. Her fiancé had graduated boot camp and was going to A school. I'm not a military guy, so I'm sorry if I word any of this incorrectly. I'm just ignorant to it all. They do a ceremony thing for family with their group flags and such. They hang out for a bit and then leave for A school. On the way home, I was asleep in the car and my sister had gotten lost. I shot up out of sleeping and told my sister to pull over the car. She did and I told her to turn. She asked what's wrong and I said that I woke up because we were by our old house. I could feel it. She made a turn and we passed the front gates of a cemetery that was right by the house. Had she kept in that direction, she would have passed right by it. What was at the start of all of this was a dream that my sister had. I think we had some dogs die before this point, but we didn't find out about the coven until several years after we moved. I didn't find out about the dream until I was probably in high school. Anyways, surrounding the end of the property, there was a tree line that separated where the coven met and our house. My sister said that, in her dream, there were monsters tearing down the tree line and that she knew, if they tore it down that, they were coming for me. Like, me. Not my sister or any of the other 5 people in my family. Me specifically. Well, not long after, in preparation of turning the property into a subdivision, they tore down the tree line. All of the stuff happened. My parents decided one day that we were moving, we rented, and we had a house purchased on contract and were completely moved out in 2 weeks' time.